This episode, it's really hitting me. Your kids won't remember how much money you make in business. They'll remember if you were there. And today, this is just something that's been weighing on me as my kids are getting older, but I'm going to kind of get real about motherhood and business, the guilt, the trade-offs. And I think kind of this myth we're being fed that we can be 100% all in on business and 100% all in on motherhood at the same time. And why honestly I turn down millions to keep having breakfast with my teenagers every single day. Welcome to this week's episode of the Best Damn Coach. I'm going to share with you today like my answer to a $2 million question that I'm curious. I would be curious how you would respond. And this idea around, I'm doing a really poor job starting out this episode, but I'm not going to go back and hit delete because we just do the thing messily. But this idea that I've heard for so long that you can have both at the same time when it comes to building a business and being a mom. And I actually kind of don't agree with that. I realize that, like as a young entrepreneur, not in age, but as in experience, you're coming against limiting beliefs. And I definitely, when my kids were young, building a business, it feels different than now when they're 16 and 14. This idea that I had in my head about what it looked like to have both meant both equally simultaneously. And I just want to have like a super raw and honest conversation about being a mom and being a coach, but being a business owner too, because I don't think this is just like this struggle and the realities of what this looked like are any different for any mom that's an entrepreneur. But this conversation was inspired by a client. Shout out to her. She'll listen and know it's her. And she was recently sharing on one of our group coaching calls in the BDC that she'd been stuck. She'd been in this other world and made really good money. And she keeps comparing, where she's at in the length of time that it's taking her to grow her coaching business with that old life and building, the dollar amount, and how she's really stuck on measuring success by the dollar. But one of the reasons she left that is because she didn't have the life she wanted to live. She wasn't able to be with her kids like she wanted. She felt pulled in both worlds. And one of the greatest catalysts for doing her own thing was to create that freedom and schedule. And so it's this. So what I encouraged her to think about is, I think in the corporate world specifically, the marker of success, how we validate the success in that sector is often through the money we make. And it's very easy to be pulled into that when you become an entrepreneur. I know I got stuck on the money. I was like, look, I can make more money. Let's go, let's go. And I'm at a season now, and here's my $2 million question, because Justin asked me this. If I knew I could make $2 million this year, but I would have to be gone 60 hours a week, it would take me 60 hours a week to do that and traveling at least 30% of my year, would I say yes? And my answer is hell no. I would not say yes. Maybe I would have said yes when the kids were littler. It was harder then. I felt like I needed something to get away a little bit more. But truthfully, that's still like it wouldn't have showed up as the mom I wanted to be, really. I think it would have felt nice in the beginning just to have a moment of breath, but then ultimately I would be missing out on things. But as your kids get older, they're definitely more attuned to the presence. And I asked my client after this, I encouraged her to take her homework and go away from the call and really ask, like, what does success, how would at the end of this year she measure success in her entire life? What would that look like? Because if success is only measured by income, then I mean, on paper, she might tell herself she's not doing enough. But if success is measured by your quality of life, being present with your children, by not dreading Mondays, by having energy left at the end of the day, by setting your own schedule, by having coffees with girlfriends in the middle of the weeks, for me, with having lunch with Justin every Friday, for me, then she would be winning. And that's how I know I'm winning. And so today, I just want to talk about, I think, the lacking conversations around what this looks like for us, those of us that are moms. Maybe your kids are big and grown, maybe they're teeny tiny, but the real version, not that kind of like the fluffy, you can have it all. Like, yeah, I get that, but there's some limiting pieces to that. And what I think really it's well intentioned. It's just that the lie I think comes from that is that you can be 100% all in on your business and 100% all in at motherhood at the same time. And I always go back when I was doing life coaching, I always had this metaphor for like your life's a radio. Like if you're imagine like an old boom box and there's all these knobs. And so you have like the business knob, the motherhood knob, the wife knob, the health knob, the daughter knob, whatever all the roles you serve in your life. And if we turned all of those knobs up to 100%, like literally the speaker would blow up. It would break all of the stuff inside. And that's kind of what happens in your life. If you turn up all the volumes and try to go to 100%, you literally just like screw up your health. You're exhausted and you end up like on paper turning those or on the boombox, the knobs are all turned up high, but like what's actually output that's going to each of them is minimal. And so the whole system crashes essentially. It's too much and something breaks. And I think there's this trap then that it says is like, okay, that this you can have it all. Messaging makes moms feel like they have to be like super moms. I know I freaking felt it. Like if they're not crushing it in business and being Pinterest perfect as a mom and having amazing marriage and being ripped with a six pack, then they're failing. And I think that's garbage. So to me, having both means actually this. It means knowing when to turn the knobs off and when to turn them up. And this changes daily and it also changes in seasons. You know, like when I wake up, my parenting knob is off because my kids are sleeping, right? But my self knob is up because this is when I'm doing my daily Bible and devotional readings. And my wife knob is turned up because that's when Justin and I are sitting together having coffee and making intentional connection time. Then I kind of turn those knobs down. I turn my business knob up. This is kind of my day in the life of knobs and what it looks like, because the first basically hour of my day is my power hour in business when I'm doing all the really high level, high intention revenue generating activities like client follow up and pitching and those kind of things. And then when my kids wake up, I turn that knob back down and I turn the parenting knob. I want to be there in the morning. I mean, call me old school, but I like to cook my kids a hot breakfast. I like to fry them up eggs and bacon or breakfast sandwich or a breakfast burrito or maybe make them a yogurt parfait because I know that someday I won't have the opportunity to do that. And that's our connection time. We eat together, pack lunches. And I want them to look back and go, man, like my parents were so present with me in the morning and they knew I was completely reliable for them. And then they go to school and I turn my self knob up because that's typically when I work out and I am focused on myself. I try to turn my business knob down. I don't check email. I don't check any of those things. And it's just me. And if I work out with Justin, it's like fun time with him. And then I come home, get ready, and I turn those things off and I turn on the business knob. And so my focus work sessions are usually like 9 or 10 a.m. to about, 3 o'clock when the kids get home. So I am super laser focused. And then once the kids come home, like the business knob turns down and the parenting, wife, family, maybe friendship, depending on what we have going on for the night, those turn up. I think the myth that I thought existed, especially where my kids were small, I tried to do both at the same time. Like when we didn't have a babysitter and I was building, the kids would be in my office playing and I would try to be like, yeah, that looks cool. And over here, I'm like trying to write an email copy and it was so jumbled. And it felt like I was so stretched in a million directions until I started realizing I just need coverage. I just need to sit down and Justin would be like, okay, 2 hours, go do your thing. Like close the door, kids won't bother you. Like go do your thing. And then I was able to turn that knob up so well. I got so much done. It was so efficient. And then when I was done, I was able to revert back and forth. And so, for me, I believe that, God put me on this earth to reach my clients, but to also show my children like that balancing act and be present. And honestly, my first business is them. My first is always going to be them. But building my business also shows them that they don't have to work within the picket fence box that sometimes is placed in society, that they don't even understand. They honestly don't even know what having parents with a 9 to 5 looks like, because even when Justin was on the SWAT team, that didn't exist. It was all over the place. And so it's so funny sometimes because they'll volunteer us for things and they'll be like, oh, but the other parents have to work. And we're like, Yeah, we do too. And they're like, I guess sometimes you're just so around that we forget. And I'm like, oh, yes, this is what I want. I know I'll never get those moments back. And for me personally, no amount of money is worth trading for that. And that's not everybody's story. Some people, this matters more. Some people, business is a priority and they have different non negotiables. And the thing about that is that's okay. Whatever you want to create, the definition of success is actually the most important part. So if you walk away with anything from this conversation, it's this, and that is being able to define success is the most important part because you have to engineer that. And that's the client that I mentioned at the beginning. That was her homework, like I mentioned. I said, I want you to go back and like beyond the business, how are you defining your entire life success? And let's build the business around that. And I remember a couple of short years ago when I was just kind of redoing things in my business and I was feeling like a little bit of an upheaval and figuring out what that looked like. I told myself, I just want 2 or 3 coaching calls on a calendar. I really enjoy the business, like the business of the process of business building, but I also recognize that my kids are in a season where even though they're teenagers, the presence they need it looks different and feels different. And so it's like now that's exactly how my business has come to fruition. Like I knew what I wanted, and so everything informed my business strategy that way. And I think it's really important that you understand, what are your non-negotiables to protect this? For me, my non-negotiables are like I mentioned, morning time with Justin and devotional and Bible reading, my workout, getting the kids ready, being able to pick them up. I mean, I have one driver, but I still pick up the other, being here when they get home, making dinner. For me, I'm at least making dinner 3 times a week. Justin might make one, we eat leftovers the other, but family dinners in general. I just want to be available for random moments like Gilmore Girls and apples with peanut butter after school and watching some cool, replays of football highlights with Miller after school, whatever he wants. A non-negotiable is we have a Friday lunch date, and then I connect with a girlfriend every week and just not being on my phone all the time, not working evenings or weekends unless it's absolutely like critical because we're in the middle of something. And then another non-negotiable is just the seasonality for me of the summertime and planning my business around it. I just struggled for so long thinking like I had to be available all the time and that a successful business is run at the same intensity all year, and it's not. I always close from Christmas to New Year. That's just how I operate. And if that's not a good fit for a client, then I'm not modeling for that client what they want, then that's fine. It's not a good fit. And I plan time away. I don't do launches in June, July, and August because I want to not have any additional obligations. That doesn't mean I'm not working. It means actually I'm more hyper focused in the time that I have. And oftentimes in the summer, I'm getting up earlier consistently, like 5, working, at 5 a.m. so that I am like getting in 3 to 4 hours of work before the kids even wake up so that then I can be available for them completely throughout the day. And I mean, for the last few years, we've even homeschooled Miller. And honestly, I'll do it again in a heartbeat. In fact, we might do it again next year. And each moments with him are the catalysts to be like, okay, yes, like I can be more efficient, but there are trade-offs to that. And I recognize that. And I think it's defining success so you know both what monetarily and time you're willing to give to the process. I think back to one of my amazing clients, Allison, and when she started with me, she said, Amanda, honestly, I just want to be able to pay for the girls' homeschool tuition, private school, preschool tuition. And I think at the time that was like $1,500 or $2,000 a month. And when she did that in like within the first 3 to 4 months, she was like, oh my gosh, I never thought this would have been possible, right? But it afforded them the quality of life that they were wanting for their kiddos. And I think that's amazing. Not everybody wants to make 100K months. Not everybody is willing to do what that takes. Not everybody wants to make the sacrifices. So we just have to understand as moms and business owners that there are consequences and rewards to all of our decisions. But if you make and understand what the definition of success is for your life, then you fit the coaching business within the confines and you are more likely to achieve the goal because you are clear on what that goal is. But if we're measuring our success off of somebody else's metric, and usually I think that's revenue, and you're ignoring your quality of life, then I think you're going to feel like you are potentially failing. And that's just not, it's not a truth at all for you. So I just felt, I don't know, Justin and I were having this conversation and my client asked this question. I just feel like this is the reminder. Maybe it's a permission slip you're looking for. You're allowed to have seasons where business is the focus and seasons where family is the focus. And that actually might even be more like daily. Those knobs might shift and you don't have to maintain that same intensity year round. In fact, you probably honestly can't without burning out. But the first thing that I encourage you to do is I look at your calendar with your family when planning out what your year even looks like, and block yourself off for vacations and big tournaments and times where you like to have downtime and school breaks or whatever the case is. And I don't believe this means you have to make less money. I actually think that what will happen for you is the more clear you get on your boundaries, the more laser focused you are on what you want, the how falls in line faster because you actually know and, what to say yes to and what to say no to. And I don't think that all this is done without a little guilt here and there. I think that would be like faking, it wouldn't be honest. There's definitely times where that guilt exists, but I think it's only because I'm living in the belief that I have to be on in both worlds all the time. And the more clear you can set that vacillating boundary or the parameters around it, the truth is, like, which guilt do you want to live with more often? For me, it's, I don't think I'm ever going to go back and say, oh, I could have made more money. I think I'm going to say, like, oh, I missed out on that. And that's devastating. But that's my story. It doesn't have to be your story. But I remind myself that, like, I'm choosing this on purpose. This is the life I get to create. There will be time to push harder or lesser in business this month, next month, whatever. But presence for me in both of these roles is the most important thing. And if you're showing up to your computer and not having intentionality and knowing where you're spending your time, then I do think you're wasting it. And so the homework I would offer you is, if you want support around how you should be spending your time, this is a critical part of what we do in the BDC. And my vow to myself is I'm never sitting down at my laptop without knowing how I'm spending my time, because while I love my business and I could easily be a workaholic, I love my family more. And I want to be optimizing my time there. So that forces me to massively optimize myself inside of my office. And so if you're a mom building a coaching business, here's what I'd say. You're allowed to make less money if this means more presence for you. You're allowed to work part-time and be totally freaking proud of it. You're allowed to turn down opportunities that don't fit into your season. You're allowed to build slowly. You're allowed to prioritize family over revenue goals. You're allowed to define success differently than everyone else. And you're allowed to change what success looks like as your kids grow. This is what I've drastically found. But the opposite is also true. You're allowed to want to build a big business that makes millions. You're allowed to work more if that's your choice. You're allowed to hire help so you can focus on business. You're allowed to travel for work. You're allowed to have ambition. You're allowed to network. The key I just really want you to take away is, like, make it your choice, not a default. Not because you feel like you should, but because it aligns with your priorities in this season of your life, and guaranteed your business and you will be, like, so much better for it. So, I hope you pay attention to your knobs. And if you feel like this episode should be shared with a friend who's a mom in business, then please share away. Because at the end of the day, like, you get to define success for you, not your coach, not Instagram, not the boss babe you're following. But what do you want your life to look like, and design it from there. And the truth is, I definitely don't have it all together. I don't do things perfectly, both all the time. Some weeks I definitely feel like I'm more present in business. Some weeks I'm more present at home. But I will say that 100% of me is intentional. I am so happy with my choices because they're mine and they align with the success that we define as a family. And so you can have both, but maybe not both 100% at the same time. And that is perfectly okay. So until next week, go coach them up.